Hey guys, today I'm treating the garden with a very special solution in my small little solo sprayer. Now, I've created a 15-page PDF. If you go to the Patreon and you're a member there, a paid member, you can get this for free or you can download it and pay a small fee. But anyways, this particular recipe is going to make all the difference through the hot, humid summer months and the excessive rain we sometimes get. It can cause a lot of problems. So I'm going to show you how to make a very simple recipe that's going to keep your garden thriving, producing, and quite healthy. So let's go into the greenhouse and I'll show you exactly how to put this together. So guys, not only does this recipe feed your plants, but it also protects from disease, adjusts pH issues, and gives an overall better healthy plant. Also, if there's any insect issues, it can help with those as well, especially the aphids that are tremendously a problem in my area. So this does quite a few different things throughout the garden, and I do select individual plants so I can test it throughout the summer. Last year this worked great. I'm doing the same thing this year. A couple of different items I'm using it on, so I just want to test it as we go along, so over a period of 3 to 5 years I can get an exact idea of what recipes working the best. Now I've said this maybe before, I have over 50 different recipes I'm trying in different plants, vegetables throughout the garden, berries, fruit trees, different things, and I just make a notation as to what happens each week in the garden, and then at the end of the year or the end of the season I know exactly which formula worked best, and this is one of my favorites. So again, if you are a member of the Patreon, please take a look there and you can download this and get a better idea. It's much more detailed than this video. I'm just skimming across the surface, but the PDF that you can download, save to your device, or actually print out a copy as I have done here, it will give you an extreme amount of detail. Now, like I said, this recipe does triple duty. It helps with insects, it helps with disease, and it also gives a light feeding. Now, as I said, this is a triple duty spray. It's a foliar feeding. Unlike some of the soil drenches I've done in the last couple of weeks, this one you're going to spray directly on the leaves. And again, I always tell you, do it early in the morning or late in the afternoon, not in the middle of the day when the sun is most intense. And the best way I can tell you to apply it is by using a misting type sprayer. Now you can either use something like this small solo sprayer if you have like a balcony garden or just a few plants you're trying to take care of, link in the description, or you can use something like this for a larger vegetable garden. These Black & Decker sprayers, I love them. They change up from year to year, so I'll put a link in the description to the most current one, and it just uses a standard battery, drill battery, 20 volt. So this one is one of my favorites. I can do the entire garden in less than 10 minutes, and I just go through it once I've mixed it up. And I quadruple the size of the formula because we're going to be making a 1 gallon formula, but this will hold 4 gallons. So I'm quadrupling it so I can do the entire garden at one time and even head over to some other areas and treat ornamentals. This can be for vegetable gardens or ornamentals. So if you're needing a particular type of sprayer, whether you have a small garden or a really large one, take a look at the link and you'll see that one of these might fit your needs. Now, our first ingredient is just common baking soda, and I'll give you some reasons we're using this in this formula. This is going to help improve the overall appearance of the leaves. It's going to wash away any of the dust and pollen and things like that have built up on the leaves, and sometimes other things as well that kind of make it hard for the leaf to work with the sunlight that comes in. So just remember, this is one of those main things that's doing that, cleaning our plant overall. Now, it's going to help during damp weather. It's going to support, or it's going to assist with the surface balance on the leaves, the pH balance, and it's also going to support vegetables that are prone to mildew leaf problems. So that's another thing that the pH will help with the baking soda, and it's just going to give you a simple overall use of something that almost everybody has in their kitchen pantry. Now, next is our liquid soap, and I usually recommend using a Castile soap. It's an all-natural soap that's a little bit safer on vegetables. If you're doing this for ornamentals, you can use something like the Dawn detergent, but I would recommend for any type of vegetables this. Now, what this does is the soap, the mild liquid soap, is going to act as a spreader or a sticker. It's going to help the formula stick to the leaves and spread across them more evenly. It's also going to help with waxy or textured surfaces, and without the spreader, water can roll off these things like the fruits and the leaves much more quickly. So the mild soap is going to help coat more evenly. So basically, This is just like an adhesive agent, but the Castile soap is all natural and one of the safest things to use on edibles. Now, if you're just doing this on ornamentals and you have some regular dish soap, remember, be careful because you can damage your plant. So use a small, do it in a small area, and then that way you can test 24 hours later if it did any damage. But I do recommend Castile soap. If you want to order that, you can get it online. I'll put a link in the description. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to find this at your local grocer. Now, this molasses, I really prefer this over just about any other kind of sugar-based product. A lot of times it's a little bit harder to dissolve them. I don't recommend using white sugar, but what I do like about molasses is it's going to support soil microbes. It's going to provide a light carbon source. It's going to add trace minerals in small amounts, and it's going to keep the soil biology alive. So you can spray this around the base of the plant as well to help the root system as well. So it's not just limited to a foliar feeding, but you can do it in the soil area around the base of the plant, around the feeder roots. This is also going to work great in containers and raised beds, which is what I have, and it's going to benefit the soil life microbes from very common, I'd say about every 7 to 10 days, and you can do it maybe every 7 days with no problem, but I would just kind of fluctuate based upon what your plants are doing. Just kind of observe them and make sure they look healthy. So if there's an issue, you can postpone the 7-day treatment and go to a 14-day treatment. Now, I always talk about using the purest water you can get. I always recommend making yourself a rain catch like I have around the greenhouse, or you could use something like a carbon filter to make sure that you've removed any fluorides, chlorines, or any other things that might react negatively with small seedlings or plants where the leaves could be sensitive. So just remember, you want the cleanest and purest water you can get. Now, I wanted to show you these cherry tomatoes in here, and you can see how dense the foliage has become. And the reason you want to use this formula is that this leaf setup we have here is more prone to causing funguses and other issues. So this is going to really help during humid weather, excessively rainy weather, whether you're talking about warm days or morning dew that's coming in. Maybe the foliage, you don't want to prune it back because there's a lot of fruit growing on it. So this is going to help also with reduced airflow, and it's also, if you've closely spaced your plants too close together, this is going to help as well. So this formula covers all those things, and it'll even help with some of the shaded lower leaves, and it's going to help feed those that may not be getting as much sunlight and as nutrition as it can get. So just remember, there's a lot of different reasons for using. As you can see, these have really grown quickly in their space. I planted them at the right distance apart, but they have really took off, and I really don't want to prune them, so I'd rather just use this formula. Now, I always recommend when using water, make sure it's not refrigerated water. We're going to take 1 cup out of our gallon, then we'll reintroduce it back to the gallon in a minute. But lukewarm water, everything's going to dissolve and mix better. The first thing we're doing is we're taking 1 teaspoon, doesn't have to be a super large heaping teaspoon, of our baking soda, but we just want to mix it for about 30 seconds to make sure that it won't clog the sprayer. Whatever type of sprayer you're using, these often have very fine meshes in them, and one little clump of something like baking soda could clog it up. So you just want to make sure that you mix everything one thing at a time and make sure it's well dissolved, and then you can add it back to your gallon and we can put it in the sprayer. So let's move on to our next item. Now, next we're using our molasses, and molasses is a little bit less common these days than it used to be, but what I would recommend is if you don't find it at your local grocery store, take a look in the description and I'll put a link down there. But usually this can be found at most larger grocers. So we're going to do 1 tablespoon of molasses, and it's a little bit thick, so just remember, you don't want to store this in the fridge. Just store it in your greenhouse or your potting shed, in your garage, and the warmer the molasses is, the easier it will be to mix. And you're just going to do the same thing. You're going to mix for about 45 seconds to about a minute to make sure there's no clumps in there and we don't accidentally stop up our sprayer. But the molasses really is one of the key ingredients in this formula because it really feeds a lot of beneficial microbes, as I said earlier. Now, last, I'm going to use our Castile soap, and this is a very, like I said earlier, this is a very safe soap to use on edible plants and things like that. If you're just using this on ornamentals, then you can get away with something like a Dawn dish soap. I used to use this in my garden, but I've came to the conclusion that this is actually a safer option. So we just want to gently stir this. We don't want to do a vigorous shake because it's going to create a lot of foaming. So let's just stir that for about 30 seconds. We're going to reintroduce it back to our water. We'll lightly shake back and forth, not a heavy, vigorous shaking that'll cause it to foam up too hard, and then we'll place it back in our sprayer. And I'll show you some things to look for around your plants as you go and inspect your garden before you apply the product. Now next I'm going to use this homemade funnel I created from a 2-liter bottle. I always recommend if you can reuse something rather than throw it away, it'll be great saving landfills, a lot of unneeded garbage in there. So I've got about a dozen of these around the greenhouse that I've made over the years. But I'm just going to add this back to our lukewarm water. Make sure we get it all in there. And then I'm going to lightly shake it. Don't do a vigorous shaking, as I said. It's going to cause too much of a foaming action. It'll blend just fine just by tipping it back and forth like that. Now when we're using our sprayer, where they're using the large backpack sprayer I showed you, I wouldn't advise using watering cans. We're trying to do a very light misting on the leaves and you'll get a better effect overall. So we're going to do the same thing with our funnel, and I'm just going to fill up, this is not quite a gallon, so we're just going to add maybe, I don't know, maybe half a gallon to our misting sprayer, solo sprayer. And I think I've got, now I'm looking at maybe 4 or 5 of these around the greenhouse, so I would highly recommend you getting one of these depending on how often you are treating your garden, but this works great. And then we'll go out to the garden. I'm going to tell you, or I'm going to teach you how to inspect your plants before applying the product, what to look for, and how to apply it properly to whatever you're growing, whether it's squash, tomatoes, cucumbers, anything in your garden, cantaloupe, vegetables, berries, fruit trees. This works on all of those because it's helping the leaf, the pH of the leaf, and all the other things that I talked about earlier. This is going to make a huge difference in production in the garden because it's doing those main 3 things. Now, as I said, you're going to go back into the garden and you're going to do a little bit of an inspection on the plants, and you're going to look for extremely dense foliage like this, and that's going to cause some of the lower leaves to stay more damp than they should be. If you're growing vining type of vegetables, whatever it might be, if the crowded vines are just too crowded, you can thin them, but you can also do this treatment. If there's heavy dew on leaves late morning, then that could be a problem as well. If the shaded area of the plant is in the center, that could be an issue. If there's early leaf surface changes or areas that are reduced airflow, if there's not enough airflow in between the plants, this particular recipe could be quite beneficial for those. So you can use this on any type of plants you want in the garden: tomatoes, cucumbers, squash, zucchini, melons, any type of peppers, beans, peas, anything like that. Anything that might have too thick foliage. As you can see, these are really done well, and I really don't want to prune them right now, although I will prune them at some point to help with the production. As I always say, in the garden, pruning stimulates growth. Now let's talk about the application method. As you're walking around the garden, just give this a little gentle swirl, maybe just every 5 or 10 minutes. That way everything stays mixed properly. But you also want to make sure that you're using a very fine mist, almost that you can't see. Also, that these solo sprayers, you can flip up the bottom and you can spray from the leaf's underside, so that's really important too. A lot of times when we're treating our garden plants, our vegetables, we only treat the upper side. So with this type of sprayer, you can go under the leaves very easy. Same thing with my backpack sprayer, you can do that as well. You want to make sure you cover the upper leaf surface, as I said, and the lower underneath. You want to lift the leaves gently if you can and spray the undersides in the interior of the plant. Spray around the lower and middle parts of the plant and focus on area where humidity lingers. Apply enough to lightly coat the leaves where you have a little bit of dripping off to make sure you're getting the right amount of product. So allow the leaves to dry naturally over time. So whether or not I can get all of my recipes done, and there are over 50 different types of recipes for various things around the garden, I doubt I'll be able to get all 50 this year. It may fall into next season. But what I wanted to say, that if you do like this recipe, again, there's like a multi-page, I think I've counted 15 pages that goes into a lot more detail than this video. The video would probably be over an hour long, and it would become quite tedious to hear every little detail. So take a look at that PDF. You can download it, you can save it to your device, you can print it out, and you can look at it months and years later, this season, next season, the following season, whenever you need it. So just remember that it'll always be there for you. Now, this recipe does triple duty. It helps with disease, it helps with insects, and it helps with light feeding. So it's not just a one-trick pony. It does lots of things for each plant, whether you're growing ornamentals or edibles. So guys, I have a lot of treatment to do this afternoon. I'm going to select specific plants. I'm going to make notations in my book because I do always try to experiment with plants. I don't do everything across the garden. I'll do 3 or 4 plants at a time, see what happens, make notations throughout the season, and then that way the following season or even at the end of the season I can give advice on what I think worked best. But like I said, When you have over 50 different recipes, you're always experimenting within the garden. So if you want to become a member of the Patreon, the link is in the description. But even if you don't want to do that, a thumbs up and becoming a subscriber really helps as well. So guys, I really appreciate you watching. I hope this formula works well for you, and have a great day.